Okay, so I think this is class number 9 on Masechet Kutubot. Give me a tissue or a napkin, please. Yeah. I have allergies. Okay, the class number 9 on Masechet Kutubot. Hacham Aharon, nice to see that you enjoy studying just like I do. I know that it's Chol HaMoed, and there's this idea that somehow in Chol HaMoed it's not a time to study. And I understand, the kids are home from school, people are with their families, and I think that it makes I'm not oblivious to that. I'm myself, I have my family here from Israel, and I understand that. But still, I feel that it's wrong to just outright make bitul Torah. So that's why I wanted to have this class. And for those of you who joined, Biruchim Habayim Mo'avim L'Simcha, and we're starting a new sugya today. The sugya is going to be on Daf Gimel, Amud Aleph, on the bottom of the page, Masechet Ketuvot. So, and we're going to study for about an hour. We'll study for about an hour. Oh, and the class will be Le'ilui Nishmat Yitzhak ben Shoshana, Ruach Hashem Tinichenu B'Gan Eden, U'V'chol Bnei Yisrael Shochavim Imo B'Tfilah, Racham Yisrael Chavek Yosef V'Lomar. Amen. Okay, so open up the Gemara, please, to Daf Gimel, Amud Aleph. On the bottom of the page, do you see that green, that green stick that I have? If you find it, if you don't, then it's not a big deal. Regular bookmark will work as well. Any bookmark. I just want to have the marker. Yeah, perfect. Even better, I love this. Thank you. All right. So, all right, and if you can all mute your mics, that'd be wonderful. All right. So here we go. So the first sugya we finished. I made a recording where I basically went over the end of the first sugya. So that's done. You can see it on the recording. It's on YouTube. It's available. And now we're going to be studying sugya number 2. Sugya number 1 doesn't tell us anything about the Mishnah really. It doesn't explain the Mishnah. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Sugya number 1 does not explain the meaning of the Mishnah, but rather it gives us or describes the relationship between our Mishnah, Betulah Niset, and the Mishnah in Perek He, Higia Zeman Velo Niseu. This second sugya, unlike the first sugya, is going to begin to explain something about our Mishnah. Another thing, sugya number 1 was Shemuel. Shemuel was the founder of Yeshivat Nehar De'ah. Sugya number 2 is going to be Surah, Rav, who was the founder of Yeshivat Surah. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh had, let's say, 3 outstanding Talmidim. One was, and they were all young, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan were very young, but still Rav was considered one of the Talmidim of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He founded Yeshivat Surah. He didn't found it. It already existed, but he was the one who brought up Yeshivat Surah and gave it prominence. The other yeshiva was Nehar De'ah, and Nehar De'ah was founded by Shemuel, but also that was around for a while. Shemuel gave it a certain prominence, and then it was destroyed a generation later, and the Yeshivat Nehar De'ah moved to Fom Bedita. So the first sugya is Nehar De'ah / Fom Bedita. The second sugya is Surah. All right, so that's also important to know. And the style is a little different. In the 2 sugyot, the linguistic style is a little different. So let's begin reading the sugya. Shalom, do you have the place?
Where am I?
If you come here, and I'll show you the place. All right. Let's see. All right. Daf Gimel. I'm going to hear you. See, I'm out of Shemuel Beismak. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So let's begin. Amar Rav Shemuel bar Yitzchak. In the Kitvei Yad, you have your Amar Rab. So Amar Rav Shemuel bar Yitzchak, Amar Rab, Lo shanu ella mitekanat Ezra ve'ilach, she'en bate dinin kebu'in, ella basheni ובחמישי. אבל קודם תקנת עזרא שבתי דינים קבועים בכל יום. אישה נישאת בכל יום. That's a statement of Rav Shemuel bar Yitzhak. Let me just give you a little background of Shemuel bar Yitzhak so you understand what's happening. Rav Shemuel bar Yitzhak was a Talmid Muvhak of Rav Huna. Rav Huna was the Talmid of Rav, and he became the Rosh Yeshiva of Sura when the Rav died. And the Talmid of Rav Huna was Rav Shemuel bar Yitzhak. But Rav Shemuel also studied with Rav when he was young. So here we have a statement that Rav Shemuel bar Yitzhak must have been present in the class, and since he was present in the class, he brings the statement directly in the name of Rav. So just so you understand, although Rav Shemuel bar Yitzhak, I guess we can consider him a third generation Emorah, and Rav was the first generation Emorah, but there was that overlap. So let's analyze what he's saying. He's saying the preceding rule, the Mishnah enunciates a rule that Betula Nised on when? On Wednesday. That preceding rule only applies to the post Ezra HaSofer Takana. Meaning Ezra HaSofer made a Takana, and the rule prescribed in the Mishnah is somehow related or is somehow dependent on the Takana of Ezra. So let's understand. What was the Takana of Ezra? The Takana of Ezra was she'en bate dinin kebu'in ela b'sheni u'b'chamishi. I'm going to bring to your attention a different girsah, different nosach, which I like a little more. It says she'en bate dinin yoshevin bechol yom ela b'sheni u'b'chamishi. I'm going to explain that in a moment. What does it mean? So the question is, comes Ezra HaSofer, and he says from this point on, the Bate Dinim will sit on Monday and Thursday. So because the Bate Dinim will sit on Monday and Thursday, we have our Mishnah, which says that the Betula Nised Leyom Revi'i. So this rule that the Betula Nised Leyom Revi'i presupposes the Ezra institution that the Bedin sits on Yom Hamishi, right? So it follows that if the Takanat Ezra is operative, then our Mishnah is operative, or this rule enunciated in the Mishnah is operative. Right? So let's understand what exactly was Ezra's institution. So let me ask a question. Before Ezra tiken that the Bate Dinim Yoshevim on Monday and Thursday, what was the state of affairs? So it says, "Aval kodem tekanat Ezra shebate dinim kebuim bechol yom." So this is or Yoshevim bechol yom, and I'll explain in a moment the difference between Yoshevim and kebuim. But the state of affairs beforehand was what? So the standard explanation is bate dinim kebuim bechol yom, that the bet din would convene every day, right? And this creates a problem. Who thinks they understand what the problem is? You're saying that the Bate Dinim Yoshevim Bechol Yom, and Ezra Sofer is coming and saying what? No, actually the Bate Dinim are Yoshevim on Monday and Thursday. So that's a bit problematic. Why would usually a takana comes to fix something, comes to improve something? Here the takana, apparently as we have it, again, אבל קודם תקנת עזרא שבתי דינים קבועים בכל יום, before the decree of Ezra, or the fixing of Ezra, literally letaken means to fix, right? Before that, the Betin would sit every day. And if you're in that situation where the Betin sits every day, our Mishnah is not operative. Ishani said bechol yom. But so before we even explain the halacha or what he's saying, I want to understand how can it say that Ezra Sofer would make a takana to say no, from this point on, the Bet Din is going to be sitting only on Monday and Thursday. You understand the question? All right. And this is a question that's raised by various mefarshim, and I think it's a fair question, and the answer is as follows. My father, alav shalom, said that the question is based on a faulty understanding, namely, when it says she'en batei dinin yoshevin bechol yom אלא בשני ובחמישי, אבל קודם תקנת עזרא שבתי דינים יושבים בכל יום, it means not that every single day the bet din was yoshev, but that there was the possibility of the bet din to be yoshev bechol yom, meaning I now have to go, I have a dispute, Reuven has a dispute with Shimon, and he said, I need the bet din. So the dayanim will say, okay, we're available tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday, please come to the bet din. That would be an option. Or they say, no, we can only make it on Wednesday. Okay, come on Wednesday. Shebatei dinin yoshevin bechol yom means there was the possibility of a bet din to be any day. It depended on what the specific needs were. Comes Ezra HaSofer and he fixes that. He says, if the bet din can sit every day, now a person doesn't know. He wakes up the next day, is the bet din going to be available or not going to be available? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe somebody had a case. Maybe there was some litigation in front of the dayanim, and therefore they would be yoshevim the next day. Maybe they won't be yoshevim the next day. So batei dinin yoshevim bechol yom means that there was the option of the bet din to sit every single day. And Ezra Sofer said no. Monday and Thursday will be fixed days, so that if a person has litigation, or in the case of marries the betula, he knows exactly when the dayanim will be available. And say the tikkun was that before Ezra, a person didn't know when the dayanim are available. After Ezra HaSofer, now he knows when the dayanim are available. He knows Monday, I come to court, I'm going to have a presence. Because one of the issues in Jewish law, and in this way, we're far, far superior to any Western legal system, is inui hadin. Inui hadin means that you can't delay judgment, right? Now, when people have to go to the bet din, they don't know when the bet din is yoshev. It's not a inui hadin formally, but it's a type of inui hadin. It becomes a wajara has to go to court. So the takana bezah was a very proper and very intelligent takana to ensure that people knew how to get to court if they need to get to court. They knew it's going to be available Monday or Thursday. All right, so let's continue. I mentioned before that the girsa, and this is a girsa brought by Shita Mikubeset, the Bezalel Ashkenazi, is Yoshevin bechol yom, not Kivuim bechol yom. Now the truth is, there is no major difference between Yoshevim and Kivuim. The Yerushalmi, the girsa the Yerushalmi is Batei dinim Yoshevin bechol yom. Also, the older Spanish girsaot has it Yoshevim bechol yom. It's a question of linguistic preference. Yeshiva, when you have the idea of yeshiva is an official meeting of the court. So when you say the court is in session, hadayanim yoshevim. So yeshiva is a noun referring to the court in session. But then also it's interesting, the modern idea of the yeshiva. Yeshiva is, I don't believe that the modern term yeshiva is somehow congruent to the Talmudic idea of yeshiva. Whatever yeshiva means in the modern world, whether it's Ponevezh or one of the other yeshivas, they don't serve a legal function. Right? It's not like that there's dayanim and that there is even the effort or the desire to try to act as the bet din for Am Yisrael, or to try to make takanot or gezerot, right? That's not the job of the yeshiva, right? So in the yeshiva world, they have a certain course of study. Even that sometimes is lacking. Even the course of study is not exactly clear. But the point being that yeshiva, when we talk about yeshivat surah, when we talk about yeshivat from bedita, we're talking about the fact that these people, the faculty of the yeshiva, that were not just hachamim who taught Torah, but there were hachamim who acted as the Bedin for Am Yisrael, and we evaluated the Masoret of the Torah Shebe'al Peh as the Bedin of Am Yisrael, and therefore as a Bedin of Am Yisrael, we'll also sometimes make Gezerot, make Takanot, clarify legal issues, right? So the idea of yeshiva is a very precise term. So Yoshevim Bechol Yom is clear. Kevu'im Bechol Yom is a little different. What does kevu'im mean? It's at any day they're available, right? So it's a little different than Yoshevim, right? So kevu'im bechol yom means they're available. Their availability could be at any day, right? It doesn't mean so yeshiva emphasizes more the judicial function, and that's why that gets sized a little better, because we are talking here about a judicial function. Be that as it may, those are the two girsa'ot, and I'm going to use the word yoshevim instead of kivuim. Do you have the place? So show the place, please. All right.
Kevuim is any day, and yoshevim is a specific day. I would think the opposite.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question?
Kevuim is any day.
No. Both. Yeah. No. Both. So let me read to you the language. So, lo shanu ela mitekanat ezra ve'ilach she'en batei dinim. We have it kevuim, right? That the courts would not be available bechol yom ela b'sheni u'b'chamishi. They would only be available on Monday or Thursday. That's kevuim means they were available on those days, right? Yoshevim means they would convene on those days. Again, there's no difference in the meaning of the sentence between Yoshevim and Kevurim, right? So both are interchangeable. It's just a question of linguistic preference.
Okay, because kavua sounds more specific usually, no?
Yeah, so for example,
Like a makom kavua is a specific spot.
yeah, or Isur Kavua, Le'inyan Korban, Asham, Israel Kavua, or Kola Kavua Kemersa Dameh. So Keviut means that there's almost like a permanent set time for the Bet Din. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. So En Batei Dinim Kevuim Bechol Yom, there's a certain permanence to the Bet Din sitting on Monday and Thursday. And again, Yoshevim Bechol Yom emphasizes the idea that it's a formal convening of the Dayanim. But no, again, there is no difference either way, right? It's just linguistic preference, how you want to refer to the fact that it's Monday and Thursday, right? All right, so continuing.
Any relation between the Monday and Thursday, the day the Beit Din, the same as the days that we read the Torah? Or
Yes, of course, because also Monday and Thursday was the day that they would read the Megillat Esther for the Bnei Kefarim. So Monday and Thursday was considered the day that people would go into town. Those are the days of commerce where people would bring their goods into the town. Let's say you're a farmer, you live in a small farm, and you don't have a Bet Knesset, so you would go in on Monday and Thursday. That's all part of Ezra Sofer. And as well, and the Betin would be Kavua. I'm using now the word Kavua. There was a permanence of the Betin on Monday and Thursday, whereas before there was no Kevi'ut to the Betin on Monday and Thursday, right? So that's correct, and that's why we read the Torah on Monday and Thursday, because that's when people would come to the market, and they would come, and then when they would be in the market, then they would also go to the Bet Knesset, and they would hear the Torah in the Bet Knesset. Okay, or the Megillat Esther. I'm putting the word. They would be Sheha Kefarim Makdimin Leyom HaKenisa. So they would read the Torah. They would read the Megillah the Monday or Thursday before Purim, right? That's why Megillah right? So that's the idea of Shirim Hamishi. Yes. All right. So again, Ezra Sofer, he wanted to create a uniform system, and that's why we have Kevuim Becholim or Yoshvim Becholim. So now we know that there is a history, but there is a legal point being made here. Namely, the history of the halacha, it helps us understand the application of the halacha now currently, right? So the purpose of Rav Shemuel bar Yitzchak is to tell us the reason our Mishnah prescribes Wednesday is related to a historical episode, namely Takanat Ezra taking place. But the important point is, it says, אבל קודם תקנת עזרא, שבתי דינים קבועים בכל יום, אישה נישאת בכל יום. So it's giving us a historical idea that, but if it would have been before Tekanat Ezra, namely when the Bet Din was theoretically available on any given day, then the prescription of our Mishnah of Betulah Niset on Wednesday would not apply. So now the Gemara correctly asked the question, why are you telling me history? You're making a purely historical point when you said it. You're saying that before Tekanat Ezra, the prescription of the Mishnah wouldn't apply, but that's just a historical point. What's the purpose of that historical point? And now, that's the question. Before Tekanat Ezra, history is history. What took place is what took place. Why are you telling me? Why would we care that before Tekanat Ezra, it's like you're telling me before the Chachamim gazru to eat meat and milk, that wasn't cooked together. It was mutar to eat meat and milk that wasn't cooked together. Okay, I mean, I understand, but that's a very nice historical point. How does that affect me today? The fact is that we're post the gezerah of the Chachamim to eat meat and milk together, even if it wasn't cooked together, right? You understand the question of the Gemara? So, Kodem Tekanat Ezra, May Dehava Hava. No. Hachika Ama. So we're going to explain. We're going to explain why does Rav Shemuel bar Yitzchak tell me what happened before Tekanat is what the state of affairs, or the legal state of affairs, was before Tekanat Ezra. So first of all, important to know what Hachika Ama means. Hachika Ama doesn't mean we're changing the Girsah. In the previous sugya, we said Ela itma hachi itma. There we were changing it. We were reformulating the statement of Shemuel so that it can make sense, right? So that we can accept the statement of Shemuel in the Yeshivan Codex. So we said Ela itma hachi itma. Hachika is a little different. Here we're not changing the Girsah. Rather, we are clarifying the intention of the statement, or we because sometimes a person says something and we're not sure. What do you mean when you said that? Can you clarify yourself? So that's what Hachika Ama means. We now want to make a clarification, a semantic clarification regarding the proceeding. And the clarification is as follows. If today there is a place where the Batei Dinim are kevuim as it was in the pre-Tekanat Ezra state, right? Kekodem Tekanat Ezra, in that case, Isha Niset Bechol Yom. In that case, our Mishnah would no longer be operative. Meaning, if you live in a place where theoretically the Bet Din sits on any other day, then you're not going to say, "Oh, Betulah Niset Yom Levi." Well, why? No, why? It's so that's why we need to know that Kodem Tekanat Ezra, they would be able to marry on any other day, so that we know that if you're in a place today where it's like Kodem Tekanat Ezra, Isha Niset Bechol Yom, meaning on any day that the court is theoretically in session. All right.
But we still have Shakedu to worry about for the beginning of the week, no?
Correct, and the Gemara is going to ask that. That's an excellent question. That's the very next question of the Gemara. So thank you for bringing that up. But first I want to just summarize. So the insight of Rav Shemuel is that the prescription of the Mishnah, that Betulah Niset Yom Levi'i, if you just look at the Mishnah, as such, it appears to be a categoric prescription. It says Betulah Niset Yom Levi'i, that's it. Comes Rav Shemuel and he says, no. This prescription depends on another prescription. Namely, the prescription of the Mishnah depends on the prescription of Tekanat Ezra. All right. And therefore, if you have a court sitting, a place where the court sit on another day, then let it be any other day. I'm going to read to you now Hilchot Ishut, Perek Yod, Halacha Tetvav. Right? Here we go. Right. Makom. But I'm just going to read the previous halacha because we're in the days of the Omer. And you know what? I just realized we didn't count the Omer. Yesterday was 3. So we just because we shouldn't. Although I'll stick myself but I don't want to forget it. So and you can all count to yourselves as I'm counting to myself. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קדשנו במצוותיו וציוונו על ספילת העומר היום 4 ימים לעומר אנחנו אמרנו יחזי לעבודת בית המקדש הקומה במהרה בימינו אמן. So you're probably wondering how I got to the Omer. I figured since it's the days of the Omer, I'm going to read Perek Yod Halacha Yod Dalet Halacha directly before, even though it's not germane to our sugya. He says, Mutar le'ares bechol yom. It's permissible to give irusin, to give kedushin to a woman on any day. Afilu b'tisha b'av, even on tisha b'av, ben bayom, ben balayla. So irusin every single day. He's not going to be tisha b'av. The Gemara says, Shemei yakdimenu acher, because maybe somebody will give her the kedushin before and he'll lose her. Aval, what about nisuin? En nosein nashin lo be'erev Shabbat, v'lo be'echad b'Shabbat. כזרע שמא יבוא לידי חילול שבת בתיקון הסעודה, שהחתן תלוד בסעודה, he has to prepare for the סעודה. So that's why you don't get married on ערב שבת, and you don't get married on Sunday. ואין צריך לומר שאסור לישא אישה בשבת, ואפילו בחולו של מועד. But the Rabbanut in Israel today, they do perform weddings on Friday. Routine. It's routinely done because Sunday is not a day off, and Friday is a day off. The state of Israel, it's an interesting place. Interesting. Because in the Muslim world, Friday is the Sabbath, so the state of Israel has adopted the Muslim position on the matter regarding Friday being a day off as opposed to Sunday. So what happens is that oftentimes they have weddings on Fridays, notwithstanding the halacha that Rabbanut does a wedding on the Friday. ואין צריך לומר שאסור לישא אישה בשבת, of course, ואפילו בחולו של מועד אין נושאים נשים כמו שביארנו, לפי שאין מערבים שמחה בשמחה. There's a law from Masechet Moed Katan, the second chapter, אין מערבים שמחה בשמחה, and we know this from when Shlomo HaMelech did the celebration for the construction of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, but that's a different law. שנאמר מלא שבועה זאת ונתנה לך גם את זאת. ושאר הימים, any other day, מותר לישא אישה בכל יום שיוצא. He doesn't bring a law about the Omer. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Although there is a Gemara in Masechet Yavamot Daf Samech Bet, Amud Bet, on the bottom third of the page, where there is the incident recorded of Rabbi Akiva and his Talmidim, 24,000 Talmidim, shemetu Pesach le'ad Aseret, but Rambam doesn't bring that as halakha, meaning there is no legal there was an incident. The incident is a historical incident, but there is no legal consequence to that incident. So I wanted to bring that to your attention only because we're in the days of the Omer. So when the halakha says explicitly you're not supposed to perform the wedding on Friday, the Rabbanut ignores that. But we don't do any weddings for the 33 days of the Omer. So I'm just bringing that to your attention. Okay. Let's now look at the Halakha Tetvav, which is really the Halakha that I wanted to read, but I only wanted to switch so we can read the thing related to the Omer. מקום שאין בית דין יושבים בו, אלא בשני ובחמישי בלבד, בתולה נישאת ביום רביעי. Now you notice how Rambam phrases it? He limits the Halakha as Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak limits the Halakha. Namely, Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak says that the applicability of the Mishnah is dependent on Tikanat Ezra, and therefore Rambam says explicitly, only if it's a place where they sit on Monday and Thursday. The Betin, only in that case is Betunani said Liyom Revi'i. שאם הייתה לו טענת בתולים, ישכים לבית דין. Right? So you see very clear from Harambam that the statement of Rav Shema bar Yitzchak, how to understand it, and therefore correct. If you're not in a makom where Tekanat Ezra is followed, then you can get married, perform the nisuim on another day, right? So that's an important point. Now, I want to ask a question.
So the takana is not married to the day of the week, just married to the day that the Beit Din is sitting.
Correct. Yes, exactly. That was exactly well said, Albert. The takana of Ezra was a prescription for the takana of our Mishnah Betulani said, but without the takana of Ezra, then the prescription of our Mishnah is no longer operative. Correct. Okay, now, I want to understand this a little more deeply, and we're going to get later on into the question of Batla Hatam, Lo Batla Gezerah, Ken Batla Gezerah, but before we get there, because it's an obvious question, there's an underlying thread here, and it's important to understand the underlying thread. Our Mishnah, which says Betula Niset Leyom Levi'i, can be interpreted in only one of two ways. Right? So, I'm going to just ask you a question. Imagine you live in antiquity, and you read the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says, Betula Niset Leyom Levi'i. You have to get married on Wednesday. What does a person who lives in antiquity think? How does he interpret that? You think in terms of superstition. Good luck, right? And this superstitious notion being that there's probably a certain beracha, that if I get married on this day, there's going to be a certain beracha. That explanation, one out of two explanations, that's the explanation of Bar Kapara, right? If I'm going to open the Yerushalmi again, we studied it I think in the first class, the explanation of Bar Kapara was Mishum Dika Beracha, right? Superstition. Okay. The second way to interpret the Mishnah is how they understand it in Babel, where they're giving a judicial reasoning to the Mishnah. The judicial reasoning being the availability of the court the next day, so that if he needs to go to court and make a ta'anat betulim, he can make a ta'anat betulim. Understand? Now, I want to read the Yerushalmi for you, because last time we read it, we only read Bar Kapara, and now I want to read something, a continuation, and you'll see how the Yerushalmi also encodes within it the Bavli, and I want to explain how that happened. So I'm taking the Yerushalmi, right? Where's my magnifying glass? Here it is. Okay. The very beginning of Masechet Ketuvot. Bar Kapara Amar, Betula Niset Leyom Levi'i. Okay. Bar Kapara Amar, Mepene Sheketiv Bam Beracha, because there's Beracha on Yom Levi'i. V'halo אין כתיב ברכה אלא בחמישי ובשישי בלבד, בחמישי בעופות ובדגים, בשישי באדם, בחווה. So if it's a superstitious reason, or if it's because of beracha, so the wedding should have been on Thursday or maybe Friday, not on Wednesday, because the beracha is on Thursday. Wednesday was the creation of the astronomical, the moon, the stars, right? So the beracha was in the dagim. The beracha was the perul vu for Adam and Chava, right? So it says, Amar Rabbi Yosef, Amar Bar Kapara, Revi'i or Chamishi. So you got married on Revi'i, and then that night, Machlis ota lachupa, and that's the beracha. So the Kenisa lachupa happens when he brings her home. So that's the explanation. So that's the explanation of Bar Kapara. And if you skip a few lines, you'll see Rabbi El-Azar. I want to explain this. Rabbi El-Azar, Maitela Ta'am de Matnitin. Rabbi El-Azar, he brings a different explanation for the Mishnah. Shimaelo Ta'anat Betulim, Chaya Mashkin, Lebetin. So the Rabbi Elazar is bringing the explanation that we have here in the sugyot that we were studying. So, where's Rabbi Elazar coming from? Meaning, where is it that Rabbi Elazar now, in the Yerushalmi, is bringing the opinion of the Bavli on the Mishnah? Right? You understand my question? And it's an important question because this will tell you a little about what happened. And I don't know if anybody here studied Masechet Bava Mesi'ah. There's around Daf Pebet, Pegimo, there's some fantastic stories in the Gemara. And one of the great stories in the Gemara is the story of Rabbi Yochanan and the Resh Lakish. And Hazit Rabbi Yochanan had a horrible incident. His sons all died. And apparently he suffered tremendously. And because of that, his personality was also a bit, was at times a little emotional, perhaps. You know, maybe I'm not mischaracterizing it when I say that. But Resh Lakish was his Talmid, and then he became his Talmid Haver. And Rabbi Yochanan used to study with Resh Lakish, and he used to get a certain joy from studying from Resh Lakish. But then he got upset at him. The Gemara says why he got upset at him. And Resh Lakish died. Okay, so that's what happened. And then what happened? So now the Chachamim saw that Rabbi Yochanan was suffering. Now there was a Chacham called Rabbi Elazar ben Perat. Rabbi Elazar ben Perat was born in Babylonia, and when he was in Babel, he studied in Yeshivat Surah with Rab. When he was young, he moved to Eretz Yisrael. And so when he moved to Eretz Yisrael, apparently he was a great Chacham, and the Chachamim decided that he should become like the Talmid Haver of Rabbi Yochanan to stimulate Rabbi Yochanan intellectually. And that's what happened. And Rabbi Yochanan was not happy with Rabbi Elazar ben Perat. He said, no, I miss Resh Lakish. I'm not happy with Rabbi Elazar ben Perat. Hazit. Okay. The point being that this is the Rabbi Elazar. Now you understand the connection. Rabbi Elazar was born in Babel. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he brought them. Remember, I said there's only two ways to understand the Mishnah. One is the superstitious way, Bar Kapara records it. The other is the judicial way. That judicial way to understand the Mishnah was brought by Rabbi Elazar from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, and it was recorded in the Yerushalmi. You understand? All right, so now, let's continue, and I want to ask a question. Where does Rav get the idea that our Mishnah is talking about a situation where the Beit Din is Yoshev on Wednesday and Thursday? Meaning, what is the basis for Rav to say this? Right? Again, what does Rav say? He says our Mishnah is limited. The Mishnah says, Rav says, yes, but. What is the yes, but? Yes, but that's only if Takanat Ezra is operative in that place. If Takanat Ezra is not operative, then the Mishnah's rule is not operative. Where does Rav get this from? And the answer is obvious. He gets this from the Tosefta. The Tosefta says so explicitly. So let's think about the Tosefta. The Tosefta is explaining the reasoning for the Mishnah. Because you remember we said originally that the Mishnah was a very simple one-line Mishnah. Betula nised leyom revi'i ve'almana leyom hamishi. The continuation of the Mishnah, shepa'amayim b'Shabbat, is actually originally from the Tosefta, and it was interpolated. I'm not sure when exactly, but it was interpolated into the Mishnah at a later time. And we brought several rayot for this, right? So Rav seems to be saying the following. Rav seems to be saying, Batla hatam ubatla hagezerah. What does it mean, Batla hatam ubatla hagezerah? We have for example, I want to have Italian pizza made with non-kosher cheese. This has been my lifelong dream. I need to have Italian pizza made with non-kosher cheese. Okay, fine. What happened? I go to the pizzeria. It ends up that the cheese is made from some chemical. In the days of the Gemara, they would make the cheese from the keva of a behema nevela, right? They would take the stomach and they would fill the stomach with cheese, or they would put a piece of the stomach in a vat with, fill the stomach with mechilah, with milk, or they would take a piece of the stomach and put it in a vat with milk, and it would coagulate and become cheese. And that's why I can't eat cheese. But this pizza, that I've been dreaming all my life to have this pizza, it's not made with a kebab of nevela. It's made with a chemical. Mutar to have the cheese, or asur to have the cheese? You understand the question? Some poskim want to say, batla ha'ta'am u'batla ha'gezerah. Since the original reason to forbid cheese was you're going to be ma'amid the milk and turn the milk into cheese with this non-kosher meat, the kebab, the stomach of a young animal, of a young kosher animal. It's a kosher animal, right? But now it's the original reason is batel. And if the reason is batel, then the gezerah should be batel. I should be able to have the cheese in this, Anthony's pizza. I should be able to have Anthony's pizza as long as Anthony guarantees me the cheese is made with some chemical. Okay, you understand? And so that's, if you say batla tam, batla gezerah. But the Sephardi approach has always been batel tam, velo batel gezerah, right? The Tosafot less. The Rashbam from Baalei Tosafot says batel tam, batel gezerah. So here in our sugya, apparently, Rav seems to be aligned with Baalei Tosafot, although of course he was well before them, but he seems to be aligned with the concept of batel hatam, namely the original tam was and that tam is the foundation for betul aniset yom bere'i. Batel hatam, if the tam goes away, it's such a place where in that case, another, since we're in Chol HaMoed, a famous thing that my father used to be very mahmir on was shaving on Chol HaMoed. So many people would say, or some people wanted to say, that you're allowed to shave on Chol HaMoed. Why? The whole reason for the gezerah to not shave on Chol HaMoed was shemei kanes la'alegel kashem menuval. Today, we shave every single day. We shave every single day. By telling a person not to shave during Chol HaMoed, he's going to bevadaut enter the second regel kashem menuval. So there's some Chachamim, I think on this point, Chacham Matlub, he had a Pesach where he allowed shaving on Chol HaMoed, but only under I want to be clear and I don't want to misstate it, under very specific circumstances. He had a series of conditions. There's a recording of Chacham Matlub where he says under what conditions he believed that it was permissible to shave on Chol HaMoed. He didn't go so far as to say batel hatam or batel gezerah, but he was, let's say, lenient. On this point, my father was mahmir, out of respect for Chacham Matlub Abadi. He went to Chacham Matlub and he asked him for permission not to shave on Chol HaMoed, right? He didn't want to be moreh halacha b'fnei rabbo, so he asked him for permission not to shave on Chol HaMoed. Chacham Matlub, of course, being a gentleman, granted him that permission. You know, one of the things I have to say about the modern rabbinate, I notice there's a lot of fury. Like an example, we're now Chol HaMoed, and it's a holiday, so forgive me about being a little less structured. I hope you're all okay with that. So it's a holiday, so many people, they follow the statement of the Zohar that says that you should not wear tefillin apolim wide. So this is a big thing. And I remember I was once in Israel, and I went to the synagogue and I put on tefillin. And there was tremendous rage. How can you put on tefillin? I disagree. I mean, Rambam doesn't have the law. But there's a tremendous rage and disrespect and anger. How can you be the person who does it? So I finally said, I'm Ashkenazi, please leave me alone. Because many Ashkenazi come out, okay. If you're Ashkenazi, that's okay. If you're Sephardic, we'll spit at you. But if you're Ashkenazi, that's the Ashkenazim are, we know they're above Sephardim. So if you're coming Mikoach Ashkenaz, we can't do anything to you. If you're coming Mikoach the Rambam, because you really believe you should put the tefillin on Cholawayit, then we get very angry. And it reached the point where I used to put on tefillin beseter on Cholawayit so as to not anger people. I didn't want people to be angry that they caught the rabbi putting on tefillin on Cholawayit. So I always do it besina'ah. But it's a ludicrous. I hope you all agree that it's kind of a ludicrous situation. Meaning, you don't want to put on tefillin, don't put on tefillin. I'm not. You have your opinion. You want to follow the Zohar, follow the Zohar. I don't want to follow the Zohar. I want to follow Rambam on this point. You understand? But there's tremendous rage. So one of the things I love about that story with my father and Chacham Batlu, but Chacham Batlu did not spit at my father. My father did not spit at Chacham Batlu. There was ahava and kavod, and they loved each other. And even though they disagreed, they were able to nevertheless have cordial and loving relationship. But anyway, that's a good example of batel ta'am. And my father would say lo batel gezerah, and therefore it would not shave on cholam wide. Okay. So, how do we deal with this situation? How do we deal with the point of Rav, right? How can the Gemara says lo shanu, or how can Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzchak say in the name of Rav lo shanu? So I'll give you a few answers before I give you what I consider to be the correct answer. One answer is, brother, you all can hear me well today? I hope you can all hear me well. Yeah, good. All right. One answer is the Besal Ashkenazi, who really was a great Talmudist. Baal Shita Mekubeset, and he was also, he was an outstanding Chacham by all estimations. He says that it's true. Batel ta'am, velo batel gezerah. That's true. Velo batla gezerah. Batel ta'am, velo batla gezerah. So what about here? Here it says something very intelligent, and I give this credence, although I don't think in this case it's correct, but he says very intelligent. He said, when do we say batel hatam velo batla gezerah? You can only say that if the Gemara brings the gezerah, such and such, this is the law. But here, since the Mishnah explicit itself conditions the gezerah, or the takana, betula niset, leyom revi'i she pa'amayim b'shabbat. So since the Mishnah is giving the tam explicitly as part of the original legislation of the law, betula niset leyom revi'i, so therefore, the Mishnah is limiting the gezerah. It's not that we're limiting. We're not saying batel hatam batel gezerah. The original gezerah itself was limited to the language of the gezerah, and the language of the gezerah is shepalmayim b'shabbat batetinim yoshevim. If you're not going to play shepalmayim b'shabbat batetinim yoshevim, then there's no point in betulani said. There's a certain truth to this, because there are cases in Jewish law where we say batel hatam or batel gezerah. But my father explained to me, alav shalom, he explained it's not that batel hatam and therefore the gezerah is nitbatel or nitbatla. But rather, it's that the original gezerah itself was limited. And in cases where you study the Talmud and you see that the gezerah itself was limited in its original form, then yes, then you follow the limitation of the original gezerah, right? And that's basically what Rabbi Saleh Ashkenazi is saying here. There's a problem with this explanation. I think some of you may be aware of what the problem is. The theory of the explanation is excellent, by the way, and as I said, I fully endorse it. The problem is that there's another Ashkenazi Rabbi Shemuel Ashkenazi. I brought him in the first class, and he has a Perush on the Yerushalmi, and he says, and we've seen this to be the case, the original Mishnah did not have that language. The original Mishnah said, "Betulani set liyom revi'i ve'almana liyom chamishi." It did not say shepa'amayim b'Shabbat. Meaning, the shepa'amayim b'Shabbat was from the Tosefta. It was not part of the original takana. You understand? So how can you say, as the Bibi Sal Ashkenazi wants to say, that since the takana of Ezra was sort of incorporated into the Betulan Nesed Yom Revi'i, that's why it's limited by its original language. It's not limited by its original language. The original language was Betulan Nesed Yom Revi'i, end of story. Rabbi Chizkiah da Silva, the Peri Hadash, he went to Amsterdam, and the question there was, this is just another example, halav akum, and the Hachamim, of course, they forbid halav of akum, right? So the reason was because of they might have mixed in halav teme'ah with the halav of the tehorah, right? So you have milk of a cow, and maybe you're buying milk of a cow, but maybe they put into the milk of a cow maybe donkey milk or something else, or camel milk or something else, halav teme'ah, right? So he made Pesach that since in Amsterdam halav teme'ah was not masuri, the original gezerah was not operative. How does he reach that conclusion? He reaches the conclusion by demonstrating that the original language was limited to a place where there is halav teme'ah masui. You understand? So again, we're not at the theoretical level. We agree with the Bibi Saleh Ashkenazi, but in this case, the theory doesn't work for the reason stated, that the original Mishnah was not how we have it today. So I want to give you my father's explanation, which I think was just great. So let me open to you. What does our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says, "Betulan Nesed Liyom Revi'i she'pa'amayim b'Shabbat." So what does the word the sheen, she'pa'amayim b'Shabbat mean? So the common explanation is, how do you translate it? Normally you would say because she'pa'amayim b'Shabbat, because pa'amayim b'Shabbat, but tedinim yosherim. That's why Betulan Nesed Liyom Revi'i. Betulan Nesed Liyom Revi'i, because the bedin is sitting on Thursday, right? I want to show you a Mishnah, two Mishnayot. The first one, let's do a Mishnah in, where is it? Let's say Masechet Besa. Okay. Masechet Besa, Perek Aleph, Halacha Bet. Is this correct? Yeah, here it is. Hashochet Haya Va'ov Beyom Tov. So it's permissible to make shahita on an animal on Yom Tov. Of course, behema, that's simple. There's no problem. The problem with Haya Va'ov is not the shahita. I once knew a very nice Moroccan rabbi. He was much older than me. And he told me that in Morocco, they used to, on Yom Tov itself, they would do shahita on the animals, and they would do a big barbecue. That was part of the Simchat Yom Tov. So again, shahita on a behema, like a cow, or a sheep, or a goat, doesn't raise any issues. The problem here is hashochet haya va'of beyom tov. The problem with haya va'of is this week's parasha, right? Last week's parasha. Parashat. You have to make Yisui Hadam, right? You have to make Yisui Hadam. I was once walking with my grandfather, Alav Shalom. He really, my grandfather, Sama Shalom, Alav Shalom. He told me what a tzaddik is. I knew him very closely. I was very close with him, and because I knew him very closely, nobody can fool me. How about we put it that way? So many phonies out there. My gosh, it's all a show. It's just all a show. And like I said, let's say if you're imagine you're an artist and a great artist, and then somebody pretends to be a good artist. You're like, what are you doing, right? Anyway, so we were once walking. I used to go with him to Minyan, and then when we'd walk home during holiday, we walk home. Let's say nighttime from Mincha, we'd walk home. We'd go through the shuk, and in the shuk there was a butcher, and I remember he once saw that one of the butchers they did shachita on a chicken. And the guy didn't do kitzur hadam, it's isur deoraita. So he picked up some afar on the way, ashikidishanu, he said the beracha, and he was mechaseh et hadam on the spot, right? So Sava Shalom Alav Shalom. So Ashochet Chayav Ha'ot B'Yom Tov. But his name, he was a Kohen, but he wasn't just a regular Kohen, he was a Kohen Miyuchas from the Galil. His family was from a family of Kohanim that were Miyuchasim from the days of Beit Sheni. And his name was Kohen Falach. Now people think Falach means Obed Adamah, so they think it's like a bizayon. I'll get it here. They don't understand, because you see, one of the problems is when we live with Goyim, and then we replace Jewish semantics with Goy semantics. So yes, if you're an Arab Falach, yes, that's true. Let me read to you. Where is it? Okay. There's a very nice, I remember, Stema, Perashat, yes, one second. Yes. Here it is. I knew it. Yes. If you look at Bereshit, this is my father's Taj. So if you look at Bereshit, Perek Kaf Daled, Pasuk Mem, it says, Vayomer Elai, Adonai asher italachti lefanav, Yishlach Mal'acho Itach. This is domestic Eliezer recounting to the family of Rivka what Avraham Avinu said. And it says, if you look at the Targum Ankelos, Va'amar li Adonai tiflachit kodamohi. Falach, tiflachit. Meaning when you're the servant of God, you're the falach. So Avraham is saying, I am the falach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? So Kohen falach, just important. If anybody chas v'shalom ever says something derogatory, kol hapogea b'mumo pogea. It was a tremendous zechut to be a Kohen, because the Kohen was Oved in the Bet HaMikdash. They were serving God in the Bet HaMikdash, so they're called Kohen Falach. Right, just so you know that. But anyway, getting back to the Mishnah, it says, Hashochet Chaya Va'ot B'Yom Tov. Now the problem is you have to do Kisui Hadam. Now, if you're not allowed to dig on Yom Tov. Hofer is a type of Horesh. Hofer is a Tolada of Horesh. So how can you be Hofer? You have to be Hofer the Afar on Yom Tov. So how can you make Kisui Hadam? So Bet Shammai Omrim Yachpor B'Deker Yichaseh says no, you can do it because it's a type of Machshir Ochel Nefesh. Bet Hillel Omrim Lo Yishpor Ela Im Ken Haya Lo Afar Muchan. Bet Hillel says no, you can't make Shachita on a Chaya or an off unless you had Afar Muchan, because you can't dig the Afar on Yom Tov. Now you're going to make a Shachita on the animal on Yom Tov, but you don't have Afar, so you tell them it's not a Seder Oraita. So it says you should not make shachita unless you have the afar muchan. Modim she'im shachat she'achmor b'deket v'chaseh b'di'avad. Meaning if you don't have the afar muchan, then b'di'avad yachmor b'deket v'chaseh. V'she'efer hakira muchan. Now it says v'she, the sheen here, v'she'efer hakira muchan. What is v'she'efer hakira muchan? Right, you understand the question? V'she'efer hakira muchan. Right, so everybody understands v'she'efer hakira muchan. It means that ka'asher efer hakira muchan, meaning ka'asher efer hakira muchan. Everybody agrees you can do shachita. Meaning you have now an oven. And the oven has coal, and the coal, when it burns, eventually becomes dust. So ka'asher efer hakila mukhan, when you have the efer of the kila mukhan, then of course you do shachita on the chaya and the off and use the efer kila to, because you might say that the efer hakila you can't do because it's mukses. Says no, ka'asher efer hakila mukhan, you can do kisui adam with the efer hakila. Okay, that's the efer hakila. That's one mishnah. So it means ka'asher. There's another mishnah, Masechet Sanhedrin. I don't know, where is the, yeah, let me get the Masechet Sanhedrin. A second. This is Moed. This is the very beginning of Masechet Sanhedrin. I think it also Perek Aleph, I think, Halacha Aleph in this case. Previous one's Halacha Bet. Okay, one second. Let me open up the Gemara. Okay. Here it says, with respect to Mosi Shem Ra. So, Masechet Sanhedrin, Perek Aleph. 1 second. Yeah, וחכמים אומרים, המוציא שם רע ב-23, you need 23 דיינים, דיני ממונות is בשלושה, דיני ממונות בשלושה, right? You know, בעל פה, right? דיני ממונות בשלושה, because זה לא בחברות בשלושה, okay. You know, don't study מסכת צדיקים, I guess you're young. All right. So, חכמים אומרים, המוציא שם רע ב-23, מפני שיש בו דיני נפשות. So, חכמים say, that מוציא שם רע is ב-23 because potentially it could be dine mamon, dine nefashot. I'm sorry. So when it says mepnei sheyesh bo dine nefashot, if you look at the Gemara, sheyesh bo, Rava explains ka'asher yesh bo dine nefashot. So here you see two cases in the Mishnayot where the sheen means, it doesn't mean sher because it means ka'asher. You understand the point? So now let's look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, Betula niset leyom revi'i ve'almana leyom chamishi shepa'amayim b'Shabbat. Did anybody's light bulb just go off? You see how Rav understood the Mishnah? Ka'asher pa'amayim b'Shabbat. You understand? Betula niset leyom revi'i ve'almana leyom chamishi shepa'amayim b'Shabbat. Ka'asher pa'amayim b'Shabbat. בתי דינים מושביים, בתולה נישאת ליום רביעי. Right? Right, that's how, so meaning, of course, Rav is using the Tosefta. The Tosefta is explaining the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, בתולה נישאת ליום רביעי. Comes the Tosefta and says, when does the Mishnah say, בתולה נישאת ליום רביעי? כאשר בתי דינים מושביים בשני ובחמישי. Fantastic explanation. How can you come and say lo shalu? Right? You understand the point? All right. I thought that's my father's explanation. I just love it. It's so good.
Question, Chacham?
Yes.
So is Rab coming? So the share could be interpreted in two ways: mipnei and ka'asher.
Yeah.
We just had in the old Girsah of the Mishnah was just B'Torah Nised Yom Harbi'i Be'almana Yom Hamishi.
Yeah.
Now there's Tosefta. Rab, is he saying, of course, based on the Tosefta, but he's saying Shemeh, you want to interpret the Sheh in the because in the key sense. Based on the Tosefta, I'm saying it's in the Ka'asher sense. I mean, was he coming to choose between the two?
Yeah, I think he's coming to explain to us the meaning of the Tosefta. That's what I understand. The meaning, the Tosefta is the official explanation of the Mishnah, and I think what the Rav is saying is, and this official explanation of the Mishnah is telling us that the Mishnah is limited too. So yes, he's explaining to us the meaning of the Tosefta. That's the beauty of this statement by Rav. Yeah. All right.
I think, by the way, in Masechet Sanhedrin, I know Harambam has the words "Mipnei which to me make more sense, then there's no mitpeneh, because mitpeneh is like key, so it says both. I think this stab got both by mistake. But
Yes.
the original Girsah was sheyet, ha'achamim omrim be'arsim u'shlosha, sheyesh bo dinei nefashot. When and only when there's a possibility of dinei nefashot in this Mosi Shemra litigation, then you bring 23 initiative.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, because the word mitpeneh seems a little redundant. Mitpeneh sheh. Right, exactly. I like that. That's why I didn't know that there. So you're saying that you saw yourself that don't have the word mitpeneh.
Yes.
Excellent. That's great. That's great. Okay. Any other questions or comments from any of the other talmidim? All right. Okay.
I have another question if no one else has.
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So this relates to what we read in Hilchot Yishud about the issue of the Omer, but it also relates to Tifilin al Shamoy. When the halacha, like Harambam brings it in Hilchot Yishud, says you could get married on any day. And by the way, the Girsah of Kafeh and Yemenites is not le'ares, but lisa.
Oh, okay.
Right? And Kafeh points out that's what in every kitab yad he has in the Yishud, and he understands why the printed Girsah changed it to le'ares, right? But the rest, every verb in that halacha is also lisa. There's no aras. Anyhow.
Very interesting.
When the halacha says you are allowed to get married on any day, nisu'im, does that create a safe harbor? Or does a local minhag have the right to invade a safe harbor established by the law, or not?
I'm going to give you my opinion. My opinion is that if there is a community that has a bet din, and that bet din is recognized by the community, that the bet din can make a local minhag and say whatever. We don't do weddings on Wednesdays because of ABC, whatever their reason is. But that would be local, and that therefore would have the status of a minhag.
Okay, and could you do the same? So now there's a mitzvah to put on tefillin every day, except Shabbat and Yom Tov.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
You make a local minhag prohibiting tefillin on day X, because that local minhag is trying to supersede a mitzvah deoraita, and it seems to be the national law would have supremacy.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to make a minhag, I don't know if you could.
Yeah. So in the case of nisuim, and I just want to make sure I understood your previous question, not the one you asked now. So you were asking me, can a local bet din say, although really according to halacha you can get married on any day, we don't want you getting married on one day or Tuesday or Wednesday, and they're not mevatlim the mitzvah because it's not like tefillin where there's a chava every single day to put on tefillin. There is no chava every single day to perform nisuim. The nisuim.
No, I know. My issue with that was when the halacha says mutar lisab bechol yom, and even on Tisha B'Av, so obviously there was some intent there, right?
Yes.
Don't be afraid to get married on even Tisha B'Av, right?
Yeah.
Does that statement mutar lisab bechol yom, does that create a safe harbor for each individual? Is it like an enumerated right in the Bill of Rights that no government can invade? Does that create a right, a defined right, or does it just it happens to be mutar, and if a local bet din wants to overrule that, they may? And what bothered me is about Ba'afilu Tisha B'Av, so it's expressing some kind of intent that we don't want this limited. We don't want this right to be limited. And so I think that might preclude a local bet din, assuming they did the proper promulgation, which nobody does now, but let's say, I would think that might preclude a local bet din from invading an enumerated right.
Right. Interesting. First, that's a good question. I have not thought about it, and it's a type of question where I would like to think about it more carefully. The only thing that we can say for sure at this point is that if nevertheless he made the nisuim on a day when he should not have made the nisuim is it's over. But that's a very interesting question. I don't know. Eneni yodea, and perhaps I will think about it, and maybe I will have more to say about it.
The other one is more egregious because you're violating a mitzvah which you have no right. There's no wiggle room there. The halacha says you must do X.
Yeah, the only cases I'm aware where a bet din can be mevatel a mitzvah deoraita is either they can be mevatlim mitzvah aseh deoraita b'shev ve'al ta'aseh, but only for purposes of protecting a mitzvah lo ta'aseh. So, for example, they would say, don't blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, that shev ve'al ta'aseh shemei yitilenu dalid amot, which itself is a mitzvah lo ta'aseh deoraita. So, in that case, when they're mevatlin the mitzvah aseh deoraita b'shev ve'al ta'aseh, they're doing it to protect the mitzvah lo ta'aseh. I'm not aware of any situation either than hefker betin hefker. So the betin can go in and take away the property of a person. Let's say he was working on Shavuot, so they'll take his they'll go take his produce, and we say hefker betin hefker. Other than that, I'm not aware of a situation where the Hachamim can annul, so to speak, a mitzvah aseh deoraita. Of course, is hora'at sha'ah. I'm not talking about hora'at sha'ah. That was, for example, Eliyahu Hanavi Nahar Karmel. That's hora'at sha'ah. Or for example, how can Mordechai have decreed ta'anit on the day of Pesach when you have mitzvah aseh deoraita to eat masa on Pesach, and the ta'anit came out on the nights of Pesach? So that would be hora'at sha'ah. The bedin can do hora'at sha'ah. But other than those three examples, no. One of the things I used to say in Israel is people used to come into Bet Knesset dressed as on Purim. They mamash yilbash gever simlat isha. So they'd say no, because you could be lavesh simlat isha. And I said no, you cannot be mevatel b'svat aseh deoraita. So it's certainly not for Purim or for any other imagined issue. There was once a case where a guy came to Knis. I kicked him out of the Knis, told him go and change right now, and he did. Anyway, okay. Any other questions or comments? You remember that in Hazit? I felt bad for him, but he said it's haram. You're in Knis dressed as a woman. Well, I don't understand. Where are the rabbis? Is it only when there's like political power or money? I don't understand. I'm saying this. באמת בתמימות. זה כואב לי. It hurts me. How can you see people dressing up as women on Purim and not tell them it's haram? It's to'eva. Ki to'eva hi. I don't know. I guess I'm just not smart enough. Okay. Let's study a few more minutes. We'll go, Belina, then we'll go like another 5-10 minutes. So we'll. All right. So that was a statement of Rav Shemuel Bar Yitzhak. So it says, okay. So the statement is very clear. We understand the statement, and we understand Hachika Amar, the explanation of the statement. And now we have a question. Haba'enan shakedu. This Albert, you asked that question before. Haba'enan shakedu. You said that you can marry any day, but we need shakedu. The rule of shakedu is that the husband must work at least 3 continuous days for the wedding, right? So haba'enan shakedu. So the answer is detariach le. So detariach le, he worked. He did it. He did tariach. He did the work necessary. Detariach le. It's the words are a little confusing because in Hebrew you don't mention, or in Aramaic you don't mention the personal pronoun le. It's implicit in the verb, right? So he worked. Tetariach le literally means he worked for him. So you understand that can't be the givsa. So there's only 2 possible givsaot.
Shakedu is for him or for her to prepare for the 3 days?
Thank you. Shakedu. He has to prepare la. He has to prepare for us. So one of the givsaot is tetariach la. And of course, he's working for her. He's not working for him, right? So one givsa is the tariyah, right? The other givsa is the tariyah la. So I'll choose the tariyah la. So it was interesting, and the language is a good language. The tariyah la. There was a question that you see the Hachamim. This was brought before the Hachamim in Spain, and Shita Mikubeset brings it in the name of Rabbi Yosef ben Megas, who brings it in the name of the Rif. And the question was, regarding a person, person makes kiddushin on a woman, and he she has to make a sa'udah. The problem is, she's at a very high class. Maybe she comes from, she's the granddaughter of Don Yitzhak Abarbanel, aristocracy, and he is not so wealthy. He doesn't come from such a high status, and she wants a proper wedding where she can invite her family and friends and not be humiliated, right? It would be humiliating to her to, I don't know, to have some plastic Coca-Cola bottles on a table and some French fries and I don't know, whatever. She wants a nice wedding, do something in the Waldorf Astoria or the Ritz-Carlton. She doesn't want to be embarrassed. So there's an interesting she'ela tshuva, and the bottom line is that he has to make her a proper wedding. He has to make her a proper seudah. And that's why this language here, the tariach la, he's doing the work for her, right? The tircha is for her. She is the frame of reference of what is proper and what is not proper, right? The tariach la, all right? All right, so we're going to stop here. We'll discuss something about Sefirat HaOmer in a moment. Again, it's Chol HaMoed, so I'm in a good mood, and it was a little less structured today, or a little less academic. That was intentionally so. But the next part of this sugya will be my shakedu. It's going to ask us how do we define shakedu? We need to give it a precise legal definition. So that's going to be shakedu. I just want to point out something that, my own opinion, regarding Sefirat HaOmer and when to count the Omer, because I know many people, they like counting the Omer ben Hashem Hashot, and the idea is that since Sefirat HaOmer is derabanan and Safek derabanan lekula, so we can count ben Hashem Hashot. That's the logic given. So again, the logic is we have Safek derabanan. What's a Safek derabanan? I have a Misvat Aseh derabanan. It could be that ben Hashem Hashot is daytime. It could be that ben Hashem, It could be that Ben Hashem Hashot is nighttime. It could be daytime. It could be nighttime. Maybe I did the mitzvah. Maybe I didn't do the mitzvah. So Safek Rabbanan Lekulla. I don't know how logical that is. Is that really the case? You can say because it's mitzvah de Rabbanan, we could be mezalzelim in the mitzvah de Rabbanan. Safek de Rabbanan lezilzul. Meaning, it's true that Ben Hashem Hashot might be daytime, and I'm going to be saying beracha, Asher Kiddush B'Shem U'Malchut, Asher Kiddush Shalom Sudar Silvanu. Right, now, if it's daytime, the beracha is beracha l'batalah. But if it's daytime, I'm also mezalzel, meaning it's a type of zilzul. Okay, the Chachamim said what they said. I'm not going to wait the 20 minutes. I'm going to do it now. I don't think that's Safek Derabanan Lekula. I think that's Safek Derabanan Leziluta. I think that's what that means. I never heard of any Chacham saying we can be, no, just, yeah.
But isn't in the case of Ben Hashem Hashot the whole question moot, because the Baraita in Shabbat says Matilin Oto Lechumro Lishnei Yamim, and Harambam codifies that as Lechol Davar.
Yes, nice. That's too sophisticated for most people. I try to say things that maybe people might actually understand, but you're right. You're 100% right. But I have another question. And we read Perashat Emor, and Perashat Emor has the dates of the holidays. So it says Be'achad LaChodesh HaShevi'i, that's Rosh Hashanah. We have Be'asor LaChodesh, that's Yom Kippur. B'Chamish Azar LaChodesh, that's Sukkot. When's the date of Shavuot? What date? Does it say B'Shisha LaChodesh HaShelishi? Is there a pasuk like that? B'Shisha LaChodesh HaShelishi Yom Shavuot Yelachem? It doesn't say that. In fact, the Torah never mentions when the holiday of Shavuot is. All it says is Tisper Hamishim Yom, and the Yom Hamishim is Shavuot. Meaning, if you say Sefirat HaOmer Bizman Hazeh is Derabanan, you don't have the holiday of Shavuot. It doesn't exist, right? The whole holiday is non-existent. So the premise that somehow we can accommodate the opinion that Sefirat HaOmer is Derabanan and therefore Chag HaShavuot doesn't exist is a bit problematic. And I would push back on that. Even though there was fine Chachamim who are of that opinion, I would say that perhaps they didn't consider what I just said. As of course, the idea of Chag Shavuot not being a specific date in the Torah. So for those reasons, under no circumstance would I ever say Sefirat HaOmer, Ben Hashem Hashot, I would wait till Set HaKochavim. And in my opinion, if somebody says Sefirat HaOmer, Ben Hashem Hashot, it's Beracha Levatala. בוודאות, עבר לא תישא את שם אדוני אליך לשווא, כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. ממש ברכה לבטלה. Other than the fact that he's not, that he's mezalzel, and what he considers to be mitzvah derabanan, he thinks he could be mezalzel, and that itself is a ve'urachu mechaper avon. But on the question of lo tisa, it says lo yinakeh. It says lo yinakeh. So I would be mahmir. I would say to always count omer when it's laila badai, and not when it's afek laila. Any questions?
Would you say the same Chasam to Arbit also?
That's a separate question. We know that the Amidah, I don't have a problem saying the early. The real question is the Berachat Hashevach of Kiryat Shema. That's a good question. Put that on the side. It's a little different. I would say Bevada'ut that in the case of Arabit, of course, you have to repeat the Kiryat Shema. The problem there is when you said the Berkot Hashevach, you said it before the time. But that's less clear cut than performing a mitzvah. The question of Sefirat HaOmer is a very precise and clear problem. Who was that? That was Shimon?
Yes, but would that be Zilzul is my question.
Well, I mean, when we say Zilzul, the Zilzul I was referring to is you're not Mekayem the mitzvah. You say, I can be Keilu Mekayem the mitzvah. So wait, hold on. Let me finish.
But it's time also.
Right. So now, when you say Kiryat Shema early, you're not mizalzel in Kiryat Shema as much as you're repeating the Kiryat Shema later. But I do agree that there's a problem with the berachot, 100%. The only thing is, the question then becomes, can you say Berkot HaShevach before the time or not? And I think it's a good question. And I think it's Sarich Iyun, and maybe you're right, maybe we should be Hozrim B'Tshuvah and not say Berkot Kiryat Shema. I'm open to that idea, meaning not to say Berkot Kiryat Shema before sunset. That's an interesting point, and I agree with it. I agree with the concern. Not the Amidah. The Amidah you can say early, but I'm talking about the Kiryat Shema B'Chotea.
Why would you say then also the Amidah? You could say
Right, because the Chachamim said Tefilat Arvit. Right, because the Chachamim said Tefilat Arvit Reshut, and therefore we can pray the Amidah earlier. The question is not on the Amidah. The question is on the Kiryat Shema B'Chotea. And again, you have to repeat the Kiryat Shema when it's Laila Vadai. So you're not mizalzel in the mitzvah of Kiryat Shema. Right? The only question there is with respect to the Berkot HaShevach of Kiryat Shema. Any other questions? Any other concerns? Any other issues before we call it a night?
Would you say the Berkot HaShevach again after this?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. Of course not. Only Kiryat Shema. Gentlemen, I'm going to wish you all Mo'adim L'Simcha, and Belina that we will continue studying next week. All the best.
Thank you.